Hey guys, Mike here. So today, I'm here to talk to you about 1999 Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, starring Liam Neeson as Qui-Gon Jinn. In Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, the peaceful planet of Naboo is invaded by the Trade Federation, and it is up to two Jedis to try and save the planet. And so we have Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. So guys, today's review was requested by no one. This is one I just wanted to watch because someone actually suggested that I should watch the original trilogy and review them. But I thought, you know what, before I do that, I should watch the prequel trilogy and do those first. And as well, it's been quite a while since I've actually watched Episode 1, so I just kind of fancied watching it. So let's get into Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. Now, one of the things that makes this film very special for me is the fact this was the very first movie that I ever saw in the cinema. But actually, I didn't end up watching this movie through all the way to the end. Not because of any quality issues, it's because, you know, I was 5 years old at the time, and the cinema was, very loud, and apparently I ended up running out of the cinema. So while this was the first movie I went to see in the cinema, it wasn't actually the first one that I watched all the way through to the end. And I don't remember when I watched the movie afterwards, all the way through to the end. All I know is that this movie and the other prequel movies have been a very big part of my life. And as a kid, I remembered loving these movies. For the longest time, I really loved them more than the original trilogy. But then a couple of years on from that, I remember hearing people say that the prequels weren't very good. And it made me think that they weren't. And back then as well, I kind of just jumped on the bandwagon. I was one of these people saying, the prequels are bad, the dialogue's really clunky, don't like Jar Jar Binks, all those kind of things. I still always loved Star Wars Episode 3, because for me, still to this day, Episode 3 is my favourite Star Wars movie of any of the Star Wars movies. But for the longest time, I remember that I didn't really like Episode 1 or 2. But then, I don't remember when it was. I don't remember if it was before the sequel trilogy come out, or whether it was 1 or 2 movies in. But I remember thinking that, no, these movies aren't bad. I started to really revisit them and just think about them a lot more and just think, no, these aren't bad movies. And I think one of the things that really kind of helped it as well was watching the Clone Wars series, both the original one and the Dave Filoni one. And one thing I remember hearing people say about the Clone Wars is the fact that it redeemed the prequels. But that's really not the case because these movies didn't really need redeeming. I can certainly understand if people say they make them better, which they definitely do. More time spent within this prequel universe is definitely welcome. But still, after this revelation, I hadn't actually watched Episode 1 in, probably 5 odd years. It might have actually been longer than that, I don't really remember. But I wanted to rewatch this movie to see if, alright, maybe I have to hype it up for myself, or maybe it actually is as bad as I remembered it being, or maybe it's much better than I remembered it being. In any case, I just wanted to watch it and just see kind of what everyone's problem with this film is. And after rewatching it, I'm just there no, this is an amazing film. I don't know what everyone's problem is. I can understand people saying that the prequel trilogy isn't as good as the original trilogy. That's perfectly fine, that's personal preference. Some people grew up with the original trilogy, some people grew up with the prequel trilogy. I'm one of the people who grew up with the prequel trilogy, so I might have a lot more nostalgia when it comes to it. But honestly, rewatching this film, it's honestly so good. I just don't understand a lot of the problems people have with it. I think some of the problems that people have is that they take a lot of it out of context. Honestly, one line which, granted, I still actually kind of make fun of because it is a funny line, is when Jake Lloyd comes in as Anakin Skywalker, and one of the first things he says to Padme's character is, "Are you an angel?" And then hearing the rest of the line out of context, it can sound a bit cringy or a bit silly. But that's kind of the point of the line. It's a 10-year-old boy who's seeing an older girl who he obviously finds attractive, and he says the first thing that comes to his mind. And in real life as well, little kids will end up saying things which can sound cringy to adults, but to them it sounds perfectly fine. And this line fits perfectly within that. And then expanding more on Jake Lloyd, the amount of hate this kid got for this performance was just completely wrong. Granted, it may not be the best performance ever, but honestly, rewatching this film, Jake Lloyd is perfectly fine as a young Anakin Skywalker. He's everything you would imagine that he is. He's wide-eyed, he's optimistic, he's compassionate, pretty much all the qualities that you would imagine from this character. And as well, another character who I remember not really liking, even after I'd had my revelation of re-liking the prequels, was Jar Jar Binks. And rewatching it again, I thought that I was going to find him a little bit irritating. But honestly, again, rewatching the film, I actually found him very entertaining, because really, I'd say the purpose for Jar Jar Binks is kind of to appeal to the younger audience. To have kind of a bit of a silly character who's kind of falling over or getting into accidents constantly, and, really incorporating a lot of slapstick, is definitely a breath of fresh air for Star Wars, because Though sometimes the original trilogy can be a bit campy, it never really delves too much into comedy. And as well, Jar Jar serves a very important purpose within this film as well. Without Jar Jar, they wouldn't have been able to broker the peace between the Naboo people and the Gungans. And if you forget everything else about his character, without this one scene, they wouldn't have won. So at the end of the day, Jar Jar was a very important character to the story. And as well, like Jake Lloyd, Ahmed Best did not deserve the hate that he got. To be honest, I can understand why people wouldn't like this character. He is kind of a bit hit or miss, I totally understand that. But to get the hate that he got, nah, it just was not acceptable. And as well, I thought everyone else was really good in this as well. Liam Neeson, Ewan McGregor, Natalie Portman, they were all really good in this film. The chance for people to see a young Obi-Wan Kenobi as a Padawan must have blown their minds back in the day. The fact they saw this wise mentor character as a learner must have been a complete shift in gear. And I would say that even though Ewan McGregor is good in this film, it is definitely in the later movies where he really starts to shine. Because within Phantom Menace, he isn't really a lead, he's more of a secondary character. Though his character does come a lot more important within the third act, for the most part it is more about everyone else's story as opposed to his. And honestly as well, some of the other things I've heard people say about this film are just absolutely ridiculous. Like one of them saying like, oh, there's no main character, who's the main character? That does not matter. You don't necessarily need a main character for a story to work. And really, if it's anyone, it's Liam Neeson. That's not really hard to figure out. Most of the story revolves around where he's going and what he's doing. And when people say the story's confusing or it doesn't make sense, it's really not. It's about a trade dispute. That's honestly the story. It's about a big galactic corporation trying to impose their will on a small, peaceful planet. And the fact the Jedi have to intervene to broker a peace. Or at least, stop the Trade Federation from doing what they're doing. And as well, when people say the Senate scenes are boring or really long, it's just like, they're not really that long. They must spend at least probably about less than 10 minutes in the actual Senate. As well, when they say stuff like, it's just people sitting down and talking, do you really have the attention span of a mung bean? That's such a weak argument to make that most of the movie is just people sitting and talking. And the pod racing scene is incredible as well. Really tense, really action-packed. Says a lot about Anakin's character. And as well, it was just something that built upon the Star Wars universe. But even though I really like the whole film, it is within the third act where the movie does really excel. The fact the movie has 4 different confrontations going on all at the same time, and it makes it easy to follow, and it makes it feel like you're not spending too little time with one scene, you're not spending too much with another. It manages to balance all these scenes perfectly, and that shows really great direction and really great editing as well. And as well, it makes every scene within this third act feel important as well, because if one of them failed, the whole thing fails. But really though, the one part of this film which no prequel hater can deny is awesome is the Duel of the Fates, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Qui-Gon Jinn versus Darth Maul lightsaber battle. This scene is incredible, because honestly before, a lot of the lightsaber battles that we had weren't really all that amazing. They were definitely a lot more character-driven than they were action-driven. That's not to say the lightsaber battles in Episode 1 aren't character-driven, but for the most part, the character-driven lightsaber battles in the original trilogy really got to the heart of their characters. I mean, in Episode 4, the lightsaber battle is just pathetic. It's literally just 2 people just going dink, dink, dink. But obviously back in 1977, that must have blown people's mind. And then you've got the Luke Skywalker versus Darth Vader lightsaber battle. That one is really good. And then it leads to one of the greatest cinematic reveals ever. But then, in Episode 6, you've got the lightsaber battle between, again, Luke and Vader, which again, another incredible lightsaber duel. But really, what the original trilogy lacked was seeing the Jedi in their prime, and that's definitely what Episode 1 delivers. It shows a master and an apprentice going after a genuine Sith. And again, this scene is just amazing. The music, the choreography, the fact that a lot of the story is told through basically no dialogue. The fact that within this scene, there's only really like a handful of lines spoken, and really the only line that's spoken for like a good 5 minutes or so is Obi-Wan going no. Until then, the story is told completely through facial expressions and music and the choreography as well. And that, again, is nothing short of amazing. It just really went to show that Liam Neeson, Ewan McGregor, and Ray Park really knew what they were doing. Ray Parker's Darth Maul, again, was able to do so much with so little. And the fact that after only like 15 minutes of screen time, people were clamoring for more of this character. And then obviously we got to see more of him in the Clone Wars series, where they really expanded upon his character. And it really gave the audience a character that they really wanted. Overall, guys, Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, is an amazing movie. I can understand some of the criticisms that people have, but to just pretty much go outright and say this is a terrible movie is just It's just incorrect. This film offers so much by itself and it gives way for much more down the line. The performances are good, the effects look good, the action is incredible, and it really just adds so much to the Star Wars universe. But do you think you guys should see it? Absolutely. Ignore the haters, just watch this film for yourself and come to your own conclusion. If after you watch it you still don't like it, then, you know, that's fair enough. But honestly, if you're one of these people who just listen to the haters, then I would say just don't do that. Just watch this movie for yourself and make your own assessment. Okay guys, that's my review of Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. Do you love it? Do you hate it? What do you think I should watch next? Whatever it is, drop it in the comments below. Until next time, I've been Michael. See ya!